All right. Thank you all so much for joining us for today's Mindfulness Modeling for Parents and Caregivers workshop that is being presented by Courtney Scott of Balance and Harmony Yoga. We are super, super excited to have her. Very grateful. I got a little preview of the slides and I'm really excited about the information that she is going to be sharing today. Just real quick, a couple of housekeeping items and just a little introduction of me. My name is Vicki Lehman and I'm the Community Engagement Specialist at Child Care Answers. We are the local child care resource and referral agency for Hamilton, Hendricks, and Marion counties. We work with families, community agencies and businesses, and child care professionals, and we're able to offer parent and caregiver education, as well as assistance to families who are looking for child care. You can always reach out to me. I'll make sure that I put my email in the chat box if you have questions about who we are or what we do, and you can always check out our website at childcareanswers.org for more information. So a few things to note. We will be recording, or we are recording today's presentation by Courtney. You will receive a follow-up email probably in the next week-ish with the recording and some additional, an additional survey and different things like that. I do request that you stay muted so that we can avoid any feedback. And I always like to give a little bit of a disclaimer, Zoom and technology. If there are any glitches or anything like that, let me know and I'll see how I can help you and if we can figure out what might be going on. But yeah, please stay muted. There will be a poll question and a survey that I put into the chat box at the very, very end. So just a heads up about that. Any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat box. Courtney is going to leave time at the end of the hour to answer any questions that you might have, and I'll be checking in the chat box if you have any questions or comments or need help with anything. So yeah, without further ado, thank you all so much again for being here with us today. Thank you so much to Courtney for being here with us today. I cannot wait to hear the information that you are going to share, and I'm going to hand things over to you.
Awesome. Thanks, Vicki. I'm really excited to be here today. And this topic of mindfulness modeling is near and dear to my heart. So I have put together this bit of a roadmap for our conversation today. But I am hoping that this will be certainly engaging towards the end. So stop if you've got questions. You can put them in the chat box. Vicki is going to be monitoring that as well as we move along, or if you've got questions or comments or additional guidance that you want to provide the community that we've got here with us today. I feel like that mindfulness is one of those things that we learn together collectively. And so I'm here just to share what I've learned and what I've seen, and then to supplement the experience you all have in your own worlds, and happy to share those stories as well. So our goals for today are really threefold. One is I'm hoping that out of this conversation, you'll be able to build a toolkit of techniques that you can use for yourselves, for any teens or kiddos in your lives, and really talk about how do you model that first for yourself, and then share it with others to build that really strong emotional, mental, and physical wellness as a collective holistic human, and thinking about it holistically. We'll hopefully create a common language in this idea. If any of you have taken a yoga class, the teachers often say, hold space. Well, what does that really mean to hold space for someone else? So we'll talk a little bit about that today, and I'll give you some practical tips on how to hold space and how that feels as the individual whose space is being held for, and how you can model that for your kiddos in your life. And then at the very end of our conversation, we'll walk through maybe what a day in the life might look like, and how you can incorporate mindfulness techniques throughout your daily routine. We don't always have a full dedicated 20, 30 minutes to sit down and do a meditation, and that's not what we're talking about today. We're talking about practical tips that you can use and interweave throughout your day and throughout your kiddos' days, just as good programming to have during the day without adding additional stress or another thing that you have to try to get done in this precious few hours we have each day with our families and our loved ones. So for our journey today, we're going to be Our roadmap is we're going to talk about being perfectly imperfect and what that actually means. We're going to be talking through several different mindfulness modeling techniques around mantras, affirmations, how to actually teach and versus just instructing. I told you we talk about that model daily plan, and then we'll do a pledge of intentions. We'll talk through that as well. So before I get started, and how am I even qualified to, and Vicki was gracious enough to give me some time today to talk through who I am. So this is who I am. So I've actually been a practicing yogi for over 15 years. You can see my two kiddos at the top. Lainey is in the super, I think she's wearing a super girl or spider girl, excuse me, outfit. And my son Finn in his Superman in our backyard. So you can see my two kiddos that impact my life daily. I did create Balance and Harmony Yoga last year for two reasons. One, yoga for myself has helped me go through career ups and downs, certainly parenting woes and struggles that we all have. It's led me through some health struggles I've had, and it's just been my constant. It really impacted me about 2 years ago when my daughter Lainey, up there on that top picture, where she was struggling with stress and anxiety as a 6-year-old in first grade. It was manifesting itself physically. We took her down to Riley. We got all the tests done. Thank goodness she was fine physically, but that meant that everything she was experiencing was really in her head and how she emotionally felt about herself and her place in this world. And it was manifesting itself, like I said, physically in her body that we could actually see. And so the only thing I knew how to do was get on the yoga mat and try something that had worked for me. And so through working with her on the mat, using these mindfulness techniques that we'll talk about today, and actually practicing some yoga that is appropriate for that age group, was able to build her confidence up, reframe how she thought about her place in the world. And I'm happy to say that all of her symptoms have subsided. But it is a daily constant struggle. So a lot of what you'll see today is proven techniques, at least in the Scott household for me, that works with my sweet, precious girl up there. I am a certified yoga teacher, 500 hours underneath my belt. My background from a corporate perspective is I'm an HR strategist. I worked all over the world leading HR strategies, doing mergers and acquisitions, but I'm truly a yogi at heart. So that's who I am, and I'm excited to spend this time with you. So let's talk about being perfectly imperfect. It's one of my favorite phrases I use. So just to set some context, a lot of the clients that I see come to me and they say, I've got self-esteem, or my kid has some self-esteem issues. And I want to be really clear, again, creating a common language about the difference between self-esteem and self-compassion. So self-esteem and self-confidence is that feeling of, yeah, I can do this. It's often contingent upon previous successes or environmental factors that says, yes, this is true. I can do this. I have all of the tools in my toolkit to be able to excel at whatever it is I'm looking for or trying to achieve. Self-compassion is this radical acceptance of self. Self-compassion kicks in when self-esteem deserts us. When we all lose, and it happens to all of us, we lose that moment where of that belief in our ability to perform or to execute or to accomplish something. That's when self-compassion kicks in. It's when that self-esteem and self-confidence abandons us. Self-compassion is not contingent upon success. It is this radical acceptance that I am perfectly imperfect. That in these imperfect times, it's where I grow the most. It doesn't mean that I don't seek to grow or accept the learning that's coming, but that I look forward to it, and that each failure is really an opportunity, or perceived failure is really an opportunity to change my perspective, learn a little bit about what's happening, why didn't it work, readjust, try again. Self-compassion is very much like the old additive around the oxygen masks on the airplane. You have to be able to have self-compassion first before you can share it with others. Compassion is a shared experience. It's that language of, I've been there too, and you're not alone. As parents and caregivers, it is really important for us to share with the kiddos in our lives, regardless of age, even if they're adult kiddos, they're still our kids. And if they're in that kindergarten, that early childhood development phase, it's important there too, and anywhere in between, to share as parents and caregivers that we ourselves acknowledge that we are perfectly imperfect. And that with that sharing of that knowledge, we are using the language of, I've been there too. You are not alone. For many of us, and I can tell you from the Scott household, COVID has not been easy. This adjusting to not seeing our friends the way we used to and celebrating now that we're a full year in. Everyone's had a birthday and not been able to celebrate it the way they want to. And expressing that, yeah, COVID's made me sad and I'm tired of it. And I wish I could see my friends. I miss my friends. Having that sense of compassion and sharing that with the kids, or that there are times that social anxiety gets the best of me when I get in these types of situations, or when I was your age, I had those same concerns. And here's how I helped to work through it. What do you think the strategies might be to work for you? How might we be able to experience this together? But sharing that piece of being perfectly imperfect. And I often use that phrase all the time throughout the yoga practices we do, and certainly in the just vernacular of the Scott household, on we're perfectly imperfect. We don't expect you to be perfect. I'm not perfect. Here's how we leverage each other's strengths to build each other up and to move forward in our daily lives and into accomplishing our big dreams and goals. Any thoughts or questions around perfectly imperfect before I continue on?
Courtney, I don't see any questions currently in the chat box, but just so everybody knows, if you do have any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. I am monitoring the chat box for Courtney, but as of right now, I don't see anything.
Perfect. Well, then we'll keep moving on. So this idea of mindfulness, it's really being about self-aware. It's about being present. So especially when we're talking to kids of any age, it's being present is being in the moment. That means not reflecting back on the past. Is your mind not engaged in the past? Yesterday was yesterday. And actively monitoring and saying, how much is yesterday going to impact today? And not spending so much time dreaming of the future that we can't articulate and reap the rewards of what's happening, and seeing what's coming at us from a universal perspective of today. So a lot of it for the kids is recognizing how their emotions manifest physically in the body and honoring those emotions. Using the vernacular, they all belong. Whatever you're feeling, it belongs. Validating the kids' feelings is really, really important. So I ask you, again, practicing this idea of self-awareness and self-compassion and being present in our own bodies, if you think about how do you recognize when you're excited in your body? Your hands might sweat, your heart might beat a little bit faster, you might get a big smile on your face, you might feel this energetic buzz. What happens if you're feeling sad or worried? How does that change? Does the heartbeat maybe slow down a bit? Maybe it speeds up when you're really worried about something. Or anxious or stressed? Do you become where a constant ball of energy where you can't sit still if you're anxious or stressed? Or do you start to talk really fast? Does your mind start to wander? Do your hands sweat when you're feeling anxious or stressed? I encourage you to go through each of these emotions, and there's a whole host of emotions I have not included in here. Think through on how you recognize these emotions physically in your body. Ask your kids and the kids you take care of the same questions. How do you know if you're excited? How does your body send a physical response or signal that you're anxious or stressed? Or maybe you don't feel safe. How does that happen? What do you feel in the body? Being aware of yourself helps you to articulate and share that compassion, because it is that shared experience again, to the kids in your life. The important thing for the kiddos is to be able to recognize that these emotions, the things I feel inside, they all belong, first of all. And secondly, here's how they represent themselves physically. Because once I understand how they represent themselves physically, I can start to employ mindfulness techniques to bring me back to the present, to calm me down a little bit, to maybe be able to navigate through the situation the way that I hope to be able to navigate through it. But it's being aware of those physical presence of the emotions and how they show up in our unique and individualized bodies is really, really important for the kids and ourselves to be able to understand. On the emotions, I keep coming back to being vulnerable with your kids. I know in a lot of the conversations I've had with my clients, it's around, I got to be strong. I have to show them that I got to be the strong, consistent presence in their life as a parent or a caregiver. I've got to, show safety. I've got to show all these other things in it. But we too experience these emotions. And so the more that we can be vulnerable with the kids, it helps them gives them the okay and the signal that it's okay for them to be vulnerable back with you. And that's what mindfulness is really about. It's about being aware, being present, and recognizing it all belongs. But in order to feel like you can be present and that your feelings all belong, the kids have to know that it's a safe spot for them to be vulnerable. And the best way for us as parents and caregivers to share that, other than just saying it, is to share our vulnerability first. In dealing with emotions, especially as we deal with change, we've all heard the old saying that the only thing constant is change. And how we react to change directly impacts how our children and the kiddos in our lives react to change. So again, it's important that we are modeling our emotions by sharing them or discussing them with our kids. As we talk about emotions with the kids, as you read through these different bubbles, how many of you have ever said any of these phrases, or maybe all of them, to the kids in your lives? I can tell you, as a mom of 2 kids, 7 and 4, I am always saying calm down, especially when they get excited and get really loud. Kids don't know how to calm down. They don't have a calm down button. We don't have a calm down button. They can't just go push it and go, okay, mom said calm down, so that's what I'm gonna do. We have to teach them how to calm down. Is that through breathing techniques? The kids learn bees breath in school, where they take a big in breath in, fill the belly, the heart, and the throat with that cleansing inhale, and then they plug their ears with both fingers and hum like a bee on the exhale. That's a way that they teach them in school to calm down and to get control, to be present in the body. We say things like, get over it. What does that actually mean, get over it? How do I get over something? Asking the kids in the question like, I know you're really upset, or you're really concerned about this, or really sad or hurt by something, an action or something verbal that a friend said to you. What will it matter in a week? Will it matter in a year? Will it matter in the big scheme of things? Helping kids to think through like the big picture perspective, and does it matter? How might I go about navigating that situation in the future? How might I re-engage with my friends if they have hurt my feelings, and share that they've hurt my feelings in a way that I can articulate my authentic self, share and be vulnerable, but also protect myself and prepare for what the reactions are, realizing that I only have control over my own actions and reactions, and that I can't actually control others, but I can control my reaction to others, and thinking through what could happen and what are my strategies going to be as I engage in these situations, instead of just saying, get over it. Taking a couple more minutes, having those conversations with the kids about the big picture perspective, and strategizing the different outcomes that could be available and could come at them, so that they have pre-planned on how they might interact in the future. A lot of the other phrases I hear is stop crying, especially for the little kids, right? Just stop crying. Instead, suggest asking the questions about, why are you crying? Why are you upset? Again, honoring that emotion in the kids, because all of the emotions belong, even if the kids can't articulate why or how, but asking those questions around what's happening, why do you feel this way, how do you know you're feeling this way, and how might we work together to progress forward. It's always about bringing the kids back to the present, recognizing how our emotions are manifesting physically in our bodies, and then how do we internally give the self-compassion to say, I'm perfectly imperfect, things aren't going to always go the way that I expect them to, and what I do have control over is how I react, and how might I want to react in this situation when it comes at me again, or to go fix a situation that's already occurred, if I feel like that's needed. So some practical tips. So mantras and affirmations. So a lot of this stuff comes back to that idea of self-compassion. So I like to think of mantras as kind of my individual hype song or phrase for the day. You know how when sports, especially like in the Pacers, and I think they do it for the Colts, they come out onto the court or onto the field, and everybody has a hype song, right? Especially I know what the Pacers do. And so it's kind of their individual player's song that's sort of their kind of mantra of what, how they represent themselves. So I implore everyone, regardless of age, to have a mantra for the day, whatever is going to come ahead of you. And so here's an example of a couple of mantras that you could use each day. And so I like to set mantras in the morning. So depending on what the day's journey might have ahead, pick the mantra that fits with that day. Sometimes it's just, I'm going to do my best and I'm going to forget the rest. And that's all I can do. Sometimes I know that I'm going to have a day, or my kid's going to have a day where it may be a highly emotional day. And so today my mantra is just, I'm going to accept my emotions as they are and let them serve their purpose. When we go to sleep in the evenings, I know most of you, I'm assuming most of you, do the reading the stories and the feel good books to the kiddos before they go to sleep. I also suggest that you give the kids affirmations, you don't give the kids affirmations, you give them a space, hold space for them, asking them the questions on some affirmations for the day to reaffirm who they are, how they engaged in the day. Sometimes those affirmations will be a direct correlation to the mantra that we set in the morning, that hype song for the day, hype phrase. And sometimes they'll just be a little bit different because maybe the day didn't go the way that we expected them to. But I am honoring who I am and how I showed up in my day today. So for affirmations, suggest that we do on an in-breath, that inhale, filling up the belly, the heart, the throat. I am the one who, and then on the exhales where you say that affirmations. I am the one who was kind. I am the one who was helpful. I am the one who was sad. I am the one who was upset or stressed. Honoring those emotions, whatever they come to it, they can vocalize them out loud, they can say them in their head, whatever works for the individual. I accept my emotions and let them serve their purpose is another great affirmation. It can be a mantra or an affirmation. I'm confident in my ability to do what? It's coming back to the present and recentering right before we go to sleep and drift off into our subconscious, and repositioning and continuing to build and reinforce that self-compassion rather than that self-esteem. Most of the kids and teens that I see are really, if I ask them, who are you? Tell me about you. They can tell me exactly who they are. They are absolutely confident in who they are. They know and are grounded in who they are foundationally as an individual and how they show up. And then if I ask them about their compassion, that's where their internal warriors start to come out and saying things like, well, I'm never good enough to this, or I have this limitation because, and I can't do this because of that. And that's where that self-compassion piece and that self-confidence and self-esteem differentiate. And you can see that for most of the folks that I get an opportunity to practice with, there isn't a self-confidence issue, it's a self-compassion. And that's where we lack. So reinforcing that self-compassion with starting the day with that mantra, that hype phrase or song in your head to help guide you and direct throughout the day. And then reaffirming through positive affirmations before the kiddos go to sleep so that they set their subconscious into this self-compassion building mode right before they drift off into those sweet dreams is really important to continuing to build that self-compassion muscle that we all have to try to build each and every day. So let's talk about how do we actually do this in a daily practice. So here's an idea on how you might work throughout the day and just some practical tips to weave mindfulness into the day without making it another to-do. So we already talked a little bit about setting the intention or establishing a mantra for the day. Here's some other intentions that we try to set in the day. And then as a parent or caregiver, if you're having those conversations with the kids in the beginning of the day about what the intention is going to be, given the landscape and the journey that we believe we're going to have ahead of us in the day, ask again. So for example, like being present, ask at the dinner table or when they get in the car from school on were you able to stay present? Did you see your mind drifting? And then just hold space by listening. Holding space is just being okay with the silence, letting them have an opportunity to process their thoughts and articulate them. A lot of holding space is that awkward silence piece. And the longer you as a parent or caregiver hold the silence, the more the kids will open up over time, especially if they know that you're not going to break that awkward silence by continuing to try to ask questions or chat, but giving them the space to process and vocalize. So in the morning, setting that intention, if we're going to be present, or maybe we're going to be helpful, kind, try to make somebody else's day, somebody else feel good. One of the breathing techniques to build energy is around alternate nostril breathing. And all you do there is you're placing your thumb on your left nostril and your pointer finger on the right nostril. You breathe in through the right, close it off with that finger, and exhale through the left. Then you inhale through the left, exhale through the right. It's exactly as it sounds in terms of that alternative nostril breathing. It's better than a shot of coffee or espresso as an adult. And as kids, it's a really great way, especially if there's a little sluggish in the morning before school, especially on a day like today where we had some 2-hour delays, that those kids give their own kind of internal boost of energy. The alternative nostril breathing, what it's doing is taking the air in one side of the body and circling it through the other side, which will really give you that adrenaline boost. During the day, working with the kids. Now, we don't see most of the kids during the day because they're probably at school or engaged in other activities, but helping them continuing to be present in their emotions when they feel that heartbeat race or their palms start to sweat or their cheeks get flushed, being aware of that those are physical signals that there is emotional reaction happening in the body. And talking about those coping mechanisms in terms of how do I bring myself back down to earth? How do I become more present in the moment? How do I become more articulate in my speech? And making sure and having those conversations and planning that out really helps the kids to be able to take those survival techniques that we all use as we engage in different conversations and different stages throughout our day, helps them become more present and work through those. The other thing you can do is that bee's breath. So especially in moments where they feel like they need to calm down or recenter themselves and get more present in the body, is practicing that bee's breath. Most of the school systems around here practice bee's breath and teach it. And we talked about it at the top of the call around the inhale, filling the belly, the heart, the throat, and then plugging your fingers into your ears and then humming out like an actual bee and feeling that vibration in your throat. That vibration is a universal sound of vibration. We all make it. And there is something so grounding and peaceful about it. I hope some of you are trying it now, or we'll try it after this workshop. But sitting and feeling that vibration, if you're actually sitting on the ground or in a chair, you can feel that vibration through the bottom extremities and you're against the chair or the floor, whatever you're sitting on. And so it is so grounding and it helps bring it back down to earth and helps recenter, represent. The other thing is box breath. So box breath is really easy. I like to do it, encourage my kids to do it when they are getting, especially when their emotions are getting the best of them. For my 4-year-old son, he goes from 0 to 60 in no time flat. And so sometimes he gets hangry. I don't know if any of you have kiddos or yourselves get hangry, but as soon as we get hangry, he gets so hungry that he's angry and he can't figure out how to calm himself down, even if he has food right in front of him. We do box breath. And so we pick 3 or 5 breaths. We inhale for 3 counts, hold at the top for 3 counts, exhale for 3 counts, hold at the bottom, that empty, for 3 counts, and then start the process all over again. And on those in breaths, we use those positive affirmations or those mantras, or just I am, hold, exhale, and then we honor the emotion, whatever it is we're feeling. that helps to bring and de-escalate those emotions, bring us back down to a spot where we can actually focus and re-engage in the activities that are ahead of us. For my son, he can actually realize there's food in front of him and he can start eating and he can no longer be hangry. But it's one of those things that we have to practice and, again, be vulnerable about that. It's okay when you get escalated. And here's some of the coping strategies and techniques that you can use and feel very comfortable in using to recenter and reground. In the evening, it's those positive affirmations before we go to bed, making sure that that subconscious brain is working and continuing to build that self-compassion muscle. The recognizing that I am strong, beautiful, compassionate, smart, articulate, loved. Recognizing all those things before the kiddos go into a deep slumber, having all those positive thoughts around them, making sure that they feel loved, safe, and are self-assured in who they are and what they are becoming. For evening, as they lay in bed and they're doing the positive affirmations, I like to do ocean sounding breath. And so it's just a big inhale in and then trying to move that breath into the throat before you exhale out. And it almost sounds like ocean waves on the exhale. And it's called ocean breathing. And it does help prepare the body. If you've ever taken a yoga class, typically the instructor will ask you to turn on that pranayama or ocean sounding breath at the beginning and the ending of class when you're laying in shavasana. It's the same thing when you're laying in bed. Shavasana is just laying, it's corpse pose. It's just laying flat on your back in supine position. But it's bringing in that full breath, starting with the breath at the belly, moves to the heart, into the throat, and then exhaling at the back of the throat out to make those ocean sounding waves. 5 or so breaths will work to really calm the body and prepare it for sleep. And if we have as we're doing that oceanic breathing, saying those positive affirmations, our subconscious is in a really good spot. Our body is rested and we can have a fully relaxing sleep and restorative sleep cycle. And then the last thing I wanted to share was this pledge of intention. So I did make this up. This actually comes out of Carmel Clay Schools, but I love it. And so I wanted to share it with you all if you have not heard it yet. So I pledge to become the best version of me who cares for myself and others. I know my self-worth comes from within, and each day I can be kind to myself, generous of others, and grateful for all that I have. I thought that pledge of intentions that was shared with me from several students in Carmel Clay school system, I just thought that was a beautiful articulation of what we were talking about today in this modeling mindfulness and how do we do it as parents and caregivers around modeling the difference between self-compassion and the self-esteem, being vulnerable with our emotions, giving the kids the tools and techniques from positive affirmations, mantras, breathing techniques, and working through and identifying our own coping strategies to identify what's physically happening in the body to signal an emotional response so that we can engage the way that we want to engage with the world around us. So with that, I will open it up. Vicki, if we've got any questions or thoughts, I'd love to hear some feedback or other strategies others have employed that would like to share.
Yeah. So thank you so much, Courtney, first of all. And I don't know about everybody else, but I was definitely over here practicing all of those different breaths. So I thought that those were super fun. And the alternate nostril breathing is really interesting. So thank you so much for everything that you shared with us today. We do have a question in the chat box. And so somebody asked, so when you're talking about the different emotions and recognizing emotions in the body and different things like that, they asked, how long does it take to teach and learn these emotions for kids at different ages, especially teenagers?
Great question. So I would say for elementary school kids under 10, you're looking at, they're pretty aware. Let me back up. It doesn't take long for kids under 10 to be able to identify the emotions if we can get them to stop long enough to have the conversation. So what I like to do for kids that are that age is, especially in the moment, if you can catch them in the moment where they're having those emotions, talk about what they're actually feeling and stop in that present moment and talk about what they're feeling to help identify those emotions. It comes back down to engaging and being vulnerable yourself, especially if we're having to be reflective about a situation. If they're coming at the end of the day and they're telling you about something that occurred throughout the day, and asking those probing questions. How did you feel? What did you notice was happening in your body? And at kids under 10, they may not recall what was happening in their body. So typically I like to share what I think might be happening, like what would happen in my body if I was experiencing those emotions. Does that resonate for you? Can you recall, did that happen for you too? What else happened for you? And just trying to really bring them back to those emotions. But for those types of kids, it's a constant conversation about the emotions and what they're thinking and feeling, and how does that connect to a physical reaction in the body. So like any good habit, it's going to probably take 2 to 3 weeks of consistent conversations about the emotions. And it's about creating that open, safe space for them to do that. And so that's where I really employ parents and caregivers to be vulnerable themselves first, to share that it's okay and to give that signal that it's okay. But it's going to take a constant conversation for several weeks in just starting to tie those emotions to situations and what happens when. For teens, it's a little bit different because typically at age 6 is where we find, from an emotional standpoint, kids all of a sudden, anywhere between 6 and 9, it's sort of the breaking point where the kids, and research shows this, where the kids all of a sudden realize they're part of a bigger world. And they're trying to figure out and navigate their role in that world. And so by the time we get to teenagers, they've already sort of established what I like to call the loyal soldier strategies, in which we've all developed ways in which we survive in our homes, in our school environment, in our extracurricular activities, whatever they may be, clubs, sports activities, sports groups, whatever. And so with teens, the difference there is being able to really talk about that self-compassion piece versus self-esteem. So for teens, I tend to talk more about, tell me who you are. Who do you know you are? Unequivocally, no questions asked. This is who you are as an individual. And then trying to turn that question to, how do you show up for yourself in terms of how do you see yourself, how do you hear yourself, and how do you love yourself? And actually have them write that stuff down. And what I tend to find when I ask teens those questions, like if I ask a teen, how do you show up for your friends? Well, I can tell you all the ways I show up for my friends, and how I see my friends, how I show my friends that I care about them, and how I hear what my friends are saying. Well, how do you do that for yourself? All of a sudden, their faces go blank and they don't know how to do that for themselves. And so turning that conversation into internalizing that everything you have inside, everything you need, you already have inside. You just have to know how to get it. So things like, how do I see myself? How do I hear myself? And how do I love myself? Could be things like, I like to take meditative walks with my dog, or I like to cook and put a bunch of different ingredients together and put them together and listen to music while I cook, listen to a certain type of music while I cook, or I like to go and have smoothies with my friends on X days because these are the friends who truly honor and see me. And having those conversations with the teens about what really fuels them up and how they in themselves see, love, and hear themselves is really big on helping those teens differentiate between that loyal soldier, which gives them the strategies and techniques to survive in our world and in their world, to how they're actually feeling internally in the body, and how do they turn to themselves for everything they actually need in terms of being able to be seen, heard, and loved.
That's awesome. Thank you, Courtney. So another question, when is the best time to meditate?
That is a tricky question in terms of, it really comes down to what the goal of your meditation is. If the goal of the meditation is to set you up for the day, then obviously we would want to do it in the morning. And if the goal, I would say time for meditation is the time that it calls to you, which I know is not really an answer, but that question is meditation is such an individualized practice that whenever it speaks to you to meditate, you can do that. I will tell you for myself, I'm not going to be the yogi who I'm happy to lead anyone through who wants to sit down and meditate for 20 minutes and sit in a nice upright position with the spine long. We can do all that, closing the eyes. That's not my preferred method of meditation. My preferred method of meditation is going for a 20-minute walk by myself, listening to either a guided meditation or contemplating a concept and trying to dive deep inside myself, trying to figure out what's happening and where I need to focus what the universe is trying to tell me in terms of signals that we're getting from the universe all the time. And so the best time to meditate is the time that makes most sense for you. You also don't need 20 minutes. You can meditate in 3 minutes or less. So if you're somebody who wakes up and likes that time in bed before you start to physically move, maybe that's a great time to employ a morning mantra and meditate on that and talk about, okay, if one of my mantras is, I'm going to let my emotions be honor my emotions today, because I know that I'm going to have potentially have hard conversations with individuals. I'm going to be really mindful of that. And how am I going to prepare myself knowing I'm doing the best I can to engage in this conversation? I'm going to be present. I'm going to put my phone to the side. Like, what are my techniques I can use? And making those mental contracts within yourself in the time that makes sense before you engage in the day. But I would say meditation, it's because it is an individualized practice. There is no best time. The best time to meditate is the time that you have where you can be fully present in your body for however many minutes you can do that. And it could be sitting, it could be walking, it could be a moving meditation. A lot of folks like to meditate through the yoga practices. So it really comes down to the environment you need, the time you have, and when that meditation is calling to you.
Awesome. Thank you. If you guys have any other questions, go ahead and put them in the chat box. I am going to put Courtney's email. I know we see it on the screen, but I also wanted to put it in the chat box so that if you have any questions or any inquiries for Courtney, you want to know more about her yoga practice, anything like that, you can reach out to her via email. While I'm waiting to see if there are any other questions, I am actually launching a poll. If you could there are 3 questions. It's just some really basic information that's helpful for us when we are planning our different workshops and the different offerings that we have. So if you could just take like 10 seconds and or 30 seconds and get that filled out for us, that would be super, super helpful. And then I am also putting the link to our survey. It's a really quick survey that you can fill out for us that gives us additional information about how you felt about the information that was shared today, what other things you would love to learn more about. So I just put the link for that in the chat box as well. So if you guys would be so willing to respond to those questions that I just popped up in the poll and, take a minute to fill out the survey that I put in the chat box, that would be super, super helpful. I see that we have almost half of you guys have done the poll questions at this point. So thank you all so much. I'll leave it open for just a little bit longer to see if we have anybody else who participates in that. We appreciate that. I know I put Courtney's info in the chat box. Any other questions for Courtney or anything like that for today? No, I don't see any other chat box questions. Courtney, thank you so much. This was so enlightening, such amazing information. I know I learned a lot today. Thank you for all of the awesome ideas and all of the words of encouragement and the guidance. It's just been so amazing to hear you share. You can tell you're really passionate about what you do. And I've talked to Courtney a number of times about, the work that she does and different things like that. I recommend reaching out to her if you have any questions at all. She really knows her stuff, clearly. So, Courtney, thank you for being here today. We really appreciate you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me. And as Vicki said, if you've got any questions, I'd love to chat with you more. And most of my sessions that I do for private clients, the first one is complimentary, and because I really want to get to know you and make sure that we've all got aligned goals for the practices and for our mindfulness work. So please, if you've got any questions, I'd love to just engage in a chat. And the whole idea behind Balance and Harmony is really to help the community build emotional, mental, and physical strength all at the same time. So anything I can do to help, please don't hesitate to reach out.
Thank you all so much. And I guess if there are no other questions, if you have had a chance to fill out that survey that I put in the chat, thank you so much. We all appreciate you. Thank you so much for being here with us today. Have a great rest of your Thursday, and we hope to see you on a future workshop. You will receive a follow-up email from us in the next week-ish, and you will have a link to the recording of what Courtney talked about today. So you can rewatch through, or if you missed the beginning, you can check out the beginning. So thank you all so much for being here today. Have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you in the future.